welcome to the podcast Love to Heal. I'm Yulia, your guide on the journey of self-discovery, healing, and spiritual growth. Welcome back to episode 7 of Love to Heal. I called this episode Celebrate Endings because oftentimes people focus on new beginnings and forget that it is the endings that precede the beginnings. The endings merit some attention too. As we approach the end of the year, today is December 17th, 2023, it's a great time to reflect on what we accomplished and what we could have done better. Of course, always give yourself a pat on the back first before addressing what you should do differently in the future. For example, I have to congratulate myself on starting this podcast. It's been truly a life-changing decision that has made me literally live and breathe spiritual growth because I've pushed myself to prepare a new episode weekly, which forces me to research all kinds of materials, books, films, other podcasts, articles, posts, etc. I've learned probably more about spirituality in the past few months than I had in years. At least that's what it feels like. Moreover, new meaningful books and connections with people have emerged spontaneously, giving rise to new ideas, understanding of previously unclear topics, and answering some lingering questions. All kinds of wonderful things have been happening. Because of my constant practice of love, I've been radiating good energy, which in turn attracts more good energy. For instance, December 11th was my birthday, and when I went to the local grocery store with my daughter, my toddler, she saw some flowers, some beautiful bouquets, and she told me, "Mom, I'd like to get you some flowers for your birthday." And I thought, okay, that's sweet. So we did our shopping, and then we went to check out. And at the register, a lady that was packing the bags started talking to my daughter. And my daughter told her that today is my mom's birthday and that she wants to purchase this bouquet of beautiful roses for me. And the lady said, "You know what? Since it's your birthday, the bouquet is on us." I thought this was very sweet. And I also felt like that was a sign from the universe that my good energy is attracting other positive events in my life. The following day, I took my stepdaughter to a chiropractor, and there was a woman there, another patient, that was purchasing some sort of electrolyte powder drink. I'm not exactly sure, but she was very excited about it. And so she bought a few packages, and she turned to me and said, "Here, you've got to try this," and just gave me one of the packets that she bought. I know these may seem like little, perhaps to some, insignificant events, but in my book, these are clear signs of love from the universe, from God. When things like that happen to you, you really should celebrate them, because this means that you are on the right path and more good things will follow. And of course, don't forget to pay it forward as well. Something else that I noticed when I started recording this podcast is that spiritual books have been appearing everywhere I go. The other day when I took my stepdaughter to a chiropractor, I saw they had a book there with different spiritual messages for every day of the week. I even took a picture of the message for that particular day, which was December 12th or 13th. And I posted it on Instagram because I loved the message so much. It was about the oneness that I keep talking about, that the universe is inside us. Just a wonderful book that I immediately was drawn to. Then, for example, at the dance studio where I teach, someone left a book on spirituality and Christianity and Judaism and sort of how their beginnings are intertwined. And at first, it didn't strike me as something of interest because I'm not really into religion per se. I'm more about just being spiritual and believing in God and the monotheism idea. But after a couple of months of just laying around, this book started sort of calling my name, and we asked around, and nobody owned up to this book. So I thought, okay, I have to take it home and read it. So I took it home and I started reading it, and it's actually very interesting. It's giving me a lot of insight into the historical ideas of how the religions came about and the roots, starting with Adam and Eve, etc. I am sure that once I finish reading this book, I will definitely take something away from it, something that I can apply to my spiritual journey and just have that feeling. And then also the other day, I teach at a actually Catholic university, John Carroll University, and so I'm used to the fact that there are books about Catholicism and all kinds of theology books laying around, but this book was particularly put into my mailbox. I'm not sure exactly who put it there, but it's called Blind Faith, and it's a novel. I haven't started reading it yet, but again, I just felt like I was supposed to come across this book, and I will read it, and I will share in this podcast what it is that I take away from this book. But what I'm trying to say is that when you focus your attention on something in particular, in my case, love and spirituality, more of the same will manifest in your life. This week, now that we're approaching the end of 2023, I decided to rewatch and re-listen to a seminar that my spiritual teacher gave exactly 1 year ago. She said some really interesting and thought-provoking things that I'd love to share with you today. To start, I will point out something you may already know, but perhaps you're not experiencing in your life just yet. God, the universe, in other words, provides health and happiness and wealth to those who practice their personal God-given gift. And this may be a talent of sorts, an ability, perhaps a knowledge meant to be shared. You know how some people are just born educators, athletes, leaders, artists? Those who follow their passions, their true desires without fear of failure or opinions of others, those often succeed and live their lives to the fullest with no regrets. And if you add to the mix a constant striving for spiritual growth, then you're pretty much guaranteed to be successful in all aspects of life. Take, for instance, a silly example of a coffee maker. A coffee maker is meant for making coffee. And if we use it just for that, it will serve us for many years. This appliance doesn't need to pretend to be something else. It would certainly fail at being a microwave or a mixer. It would break and become useless if we used it for anything other than to make coffee. Similarly with people, we all have something special we can share with the world, a gift that we can hone through practice and study that will make us happy and be useful to others. Just think about the number of people who are miserable in their jobs, who are losing precious time staying in professions they don't enjoy, stressing, experiencing anxiety, and not living life to the fullest because they're not being true to themselves. I'm sure you've heard the saying, if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. I couldn't agree more with this saying. I personally have tried my hand at different professions, different jobs, and I knew right away that a certain job was not a good fit for me. I remember, for example, I used to live in Miami, and I had just finished my master's degree, and the idea was to find a teaching job where I could teach Spanish and Russian, but I couldn't find it right away. So I was desperate, and I applied for this job of a patient liaison at a plastic surgeon office. They hired me because I could speak different languages and communicate with patients from different backgrounds. But after a couple of weeks of looking at people's post-surgery scars and stitches, I remember almost passing out. I couldn't take it anymore. And so I actually got demoted to being a secretary, which was even worse because being stuck behind a desk booking appointments is not even remotely close to what I enjoy doing. So I quit that job fairly soon and actually started my own language tutoring business, which proved to be successful until I set out to do even greater things. But I was really happy in those several years that I was running my own tutoring business. And I've changed jobs many times. I don't think there's anything wrong with it because sometimes it takes time to find ourselves, right? It takes some people longer to find what they truly love, what they want to do for the rest of their life. And sometimes it doesn't even have to be something that you choose for the rest of your life, right? You can do several things at once. As, for example, I am doing right now. I teach language at a university and I teach dance at a dance studio. And these are my passions that I couldn't choose one over the other. I couldn't choose just language or I couldn't choose just dance. It was always those two. And then, of course, the podcast came along, which is another project of mine, but I equally enjoy doing it, and I can see how I'm changing for the better as I'm doing this podcast. I know some people who find themselves much later in life, in their 40s and their 50s. I know one person that started studying to become a doctor in their 40s and now is a very successful ER doctor. It just takes some people longer than others to find themselves, which was my case too. And I had a lot of detours in my life. But looking back at them, I choose to celebrate them. It's never too late to find what it is that brings you true joy. Because when you feel joy every day of your life, because you love what you do, you vibrate at a higher energy. Higher energy means better health, better mood, and better well-being overall. I know it can be scary to follow our intuition, to follow our heart's desires, in fear of being ridiculed, not supported, or failing. But it's every person's right to find what they love in this life and to live it. Love works wonders. God is love. The universe is loving, and it won't let anyone who lives by the law of love to fail. When people love what they do, they receive a constant flow of divine energy that keeps them going, bringing success and producing more life energy. My teacher, she actually calls it being plugged into the divine outlet. When you do what you love, you're not greedy, you share your gift, you give it away because it makes the world that much better. Think of visual artists or musicians that create out of joy. To keep their creations to themselves stored away in some closet would be pointless. Of course, if the only goal in mind is to make money, chances are the divine gift may not amount to anything, or maybe of temporary nature. It's when we give without focusing on the return that we gain the most. I will actually have a whole episode next season dedicated entirely to giving, in which I will discuss how this works when you give, how much you receive in return. The more you give, the more you get. Another point I'd like to bring up is the feeling of being protected, being safe from any harm. If you are one to take extra measures of protection by installing cameras and alarms in your house, by carrying pepper spray, for example, in your purse, or hiding a weapon under your pillow, you should know that by doing this, you are opening yourself up to fear and to the opportunity for crime and unfortunate events in your life. Protecting yourself without apparent reason, just in case, actually reveals your personal inner aggression, your internal insecurities. When you believe in love, when your heart is open and you trust the process of life and you trust divine will, there's simply no room for fear and no need for protection. If you install a camera at your front door with the intent of catching a thief, and nowadays this happens all the time, people steal each other's packages apparently, you're saying to the universe, you're declaring that you're scared, and you're declaring that there are thieves out there, and so very likely a thief will appear on your doorstep and will take away your package from Amazon, probably, right? And then what will happen? You will proclaim that you're right, what a great idea it was to install this camera, because look what happened, right? Somebody stole your package. But if you've come this far in the podcast to episode 7, it's really my hope that your views on life have begun to change. Acquiring a new outlook on life, of course, takes time. It takes time to assimilate. But believe me, once you begin to live fully by the law of love, fears and insecurities will be replaced by calmness, happiness, and trust. When in your heart and soul you don't feel fear and aggression, there won't be any room or any reason in your reality for the manifestation of any of these crimes or unfortunate events. But you have to believe in love wholeheartedly. In other words, you can't be on the fence about it. You can't be trusting one day and then not trusting the other day, or be fearful in some situations and not fearful in other situations. It's sort of like people say, you can't be a little bit pregnant, right? You need to choose one or the other. Is it going to be love or is it going to be fear? Of course, I am telling you to always choose love for yourself, always. And like I said, I know that it can be hard, especially at first, to trust completely something you don't see, a force that you don't see, right? But with practice, you can achieve it. If your current perceptions are not bringing you love, happiness, and fulfillment that you desire, try experimenting with your gift of conscious awareness and noticing where you're putting your attention and making conscious choices to shift your perceptions from fear to love, from insecurities to trust. Try it. Something else that I learned on the spiritual journey that helps me keep my ego in check is that what is true for me may not be true for another. Our experiences dictate our beliefs, right? Our upbringing, our location in this world, our past lives, and so much more goes into forming our behavior and our beliefs that I simply can't expect everyone to agree with me, and I certainly can't force my beliefs on someone else. A great example that my teacher gave is picturing all people on this earth standing in a circle. Just kind of picture it in your head, a big circle of people holding hands. You are standing in the circle too, and immediately to your left and right stand your family and friends. And if you only look at that specific section of the circle, because it's so large, it's as if you were looking at a straight line, right? Since the circle is so big, you can't see where it starts to curve. So those standing in that line with you are all looking forward. And this means you see the world from that particular side, from that particular point of view. And your beliefs are likely to be similar with those of your neighbors in the line. Now let's move around the circle to the left, for example, to where the next group of people is standing, sort of perpendicular to you, and looking to what would be your right. Those people on the bend of the circle, from your perspective, they have a very distinct point of view. But at the same time, they can still turn their heads and look forward in your direction. And similarly, you too can turn your head to the right and see what that group of people is seeing. In other words, despite your differing points of view, you can still understand each other and perhaps avoid conflict. Finally, let's go even further around the circle from our point of view until we arrive at the section of people that are looking straight at us. These people are opposite of us, they're facing us, and have a completely different point of view. So different that neither they nor we can even turn our heads in any way that will help us see the world from each other's points of view. What's true for them is a lie to us, and what's true for us is a lie to them. Understanding this helps to live life more peacefully and concentrate on our own development rather than going around trying to fix others. As the Indian lawyer Mahatma Gandhi once said, if you want to change the world, start with yourself. Learning to put ourselves in someone else's shoes and to love everyone in this world, despite our differences, is one of the most important lessons of humanity and one that helps our soul most to evolve. To love God is to love everyone and everything. This is the monotheism that I mention in almost every episode. Moreover, if we talk about karma, God gives us many lives to do just that, to see life from different angles, from wealth, from poverty, from good health, from disability, from power, from weakness. I will also dedicate a whole episode to karma, in which I will explain in detail how karma works. But for now, I just want you to know that with each life we're born into, we have very different bodies and circumstances so that our soul can learn and grow. If you start to learn this lesson consciously, let's say in this life, you've come to awaken and you're consciously learning, you may not need very many future lives for your soul to finish the journey and go back to God. On the other hand, if you don't learn this lesson, if you don't love the one different from you, if you don't understand him or her, God will put you in their place in future lives. Then you will have a subconscious experience from then on, from that particular point of view. If in this life you were born to wealthy, educated parents, let's say, you may not understand a person who was born to uneducated, poor alcoholics. If you find yourself judging people different from you, that means you haven't been in their shoes in previous lives and will have this experience in future lives. Unless, of course, you choose not to judge and to love in this life. One way or another, you will learn not to judge and love everyone unconditionally. In the last couple years, I also found myself giving people the benefit of the doubt. If someone is hostile towards me, I first tell myself they're probably having a bad day. Something happened or they're not feeling well. I don't know what's going on in their life, so I should definitely not judge or get offended and aggressive in return. After, I can try to figure out what is it about me that attracted this hostile individual into my life. Right now, if you're listening to this episode at the close of 2023, your ego might be tested in various ways. Your reaction to stressful situations and unexpected difficulties will dictate how the next year will start off for you. So try your best to stay away from judging people and situations. I talked about this also in previous episodes. Try not to judge anything. Turn to unconditional love instead to solve any and all issues. Remember, your ego wants what's best for your body, what's best for today. But your body is temporary. Think of your soul, which is eternal. Something else that I'd like to bring up today is if you ever need to critique someone or put more positively, educate someone, like your kids, for example, or maybe your significant other, if you want to give them some constructive criticism on something that perhaps they're not doing correctly, the best way to do this is with the plus minus plus formula. The first plus is very important because when the mind and the ego hears something negative, right away the mind wants to counter, right? It almost perceives the critique as an attack, right? So an attack on your intelligence, an attack on your abilities. So really don't skip out on the positive. In other words, let's say we're talking to our kids, you can say, I love you very much, and you're so good at such and such. However, let's work on this. And I will help you with whatever I can, right? So you say that you love the person and that they're good at something. So that's the first plus. You say, however, and there's the minus. However, you're lacking in such and such aspect, and then finish it also with a plus. Say something positive. So that's the last thing that the person remembers. You can apply this formula, honestly, everywhere. At work, with friends, with family. So give that a try, because people do respond better to positivity in all cases, right? And finally, before New Year's, people like to plan for the new year. Yeah? People like to make wishes and resolutions. Of course, you need to know what it is you want in this life or next year. But at the same time, think about leaving it to God to decide what in fact is right and good for you. A personal plan and a goal is definitely necessary, because without a goal in mind, there won't be any movement of energy. But do remember what I talked about in the first couple of episodes is thinking dialectically, living a life of dialectical ideas, which means that you make out a goal for yourself, but at the same time, you let God lead you on the correct paths and trust that you will end up where you need to be. The energy of true desires will move you closer to your goal. But nonetheless, just be aware that the final result is in God's hands. For example, let's say you plan to apply for a job in your field and you do all the necessary preparations for it. You fill out the applications, you have the interview, but then you don't get hired, right? Who hasn't that happened to? And I know it's happened to me. Don't get upset at the result. That's the key here. Understand that this job was not meant for you, that there's something better for you in the future. You just don't know it or see it yet. Again, we can't see the full picture. We can't see the full trajectory of our life, but God can. So that's why you should leave it to God to take care of the final result. Work towards your goal, moving your divine energy, and it will take you to exactly the place you need to be at the correct time. Trust the process of life. Don't let your happiness depend on achievements or failures of earthly goals. Moreover, while on my spiritual journey, I learned to never pray or ask God for anything other than love. I used to constantly ask God for money, a job, a relationship, this and that. Now that I understand that my happiness doesn't depend on earthly possessions, for instance, or earthly pleasures, I stopped wishing for material things. I stopped asking for health. I only ask now for love. And I know now that love heals everything. Love heals our health, our relationships. Love provides the careers that are good for us. God provides everything, and God is love. So it only makes sense to ever ask God for more love in our soul, for more love in the souls of our kids and all of humanity for that matter. This point, of course, comes with the understanding that the universe is in us, that our soul is divine, and that we already have everything we need to be happy, healthy, and successful. When we strive to fill our heart and soul with unconditional love, all other aspects of our life will flourish. Since we're all here because our souls need to learn to love unconditionally and evolve, we should accept the fact that none of us are perfect, but we have the potential to be. So the next time you want to make a wish to be able to love this world as God does, with all its imperfections. And by the way, I also wanted to mention something about playing the lottery. I know a lot of people partake in this fun game, you can call it. But if you are really playing in hopes to get rich, this is not a great idea. And let me explain why. First of all, you don't have the money for a reason. If you don't have those millions of dollars that you're playing for, it means that you're not ready for it. It means that if you do win that money for some reason, it may make you miserable. I mean, how many times have you heard about people winning the lottery and then their families fall apart, or they get robbed, or they squander their money on drugs and other useless things? If your soul is ready for something, God will provide, and happiness will follow. If you take something by force or before you're ready for it, you're bound to lose it. Or your health will go out the window, or you will suffer, or your relationships will suffer. That's why it's so important to set your priorities correctly. When love and God are in first place, you don't even have to worry about anything else, because everything else will follow. Everything will fall in place. If you don't currently have something that you desire, you should look into the reasons behind it. It can be anything from resentment and fear to baggage that carried over from past lives. For example, if you have a hard time finding a boyfriend or a husband, you might ask, is there something in your subconscious about maybe hating the other sex, not trusting men? Did your mother or grandmother resent their husbands for cheating? Did you have a previous negative experience in regards to men and you haven't let go? There may very well be an energetic block to love, or past life programs that need to be removed. If you can't figure it out on your own, you may need to seek professional help. There's nothing wrong with that. But make it your daily goal to grow love in the soul, to become generous with your love to all. And this will help in resolving any issues. And it all starts with gratitude. As this year comes to a close, let's thank God for it. No matter how good or bad or in between it was, let's be thankful for it, for bringing us to this day. And let's align our energy with divine love and watch as miracles begin to flood our reality. Happy New Year! In the words of Benjamin Franklin, let each new year find you a better person.